My greetings to everyone. I am Professor Namita Rajput, Professor in Department of Commerce, Sri Aurobindo College, University of Delhi. In the ongoing series of corporate governance, today we are going to talk on a very pertinent topic, that is, the recent challenges in the corporate governance. Corporate governance refers to the system of rules, practices and the processes by which a company is directed and controlled. It encompasses the relationship among the various stakeholders involved in the organization like shareholders, management, employees, customers, suppliers and the broad community. The primary goal of the corporate governance is to ensure the transparency, accountability, fairness and the ethical behavior in all the aspects of a company's operation. Now, enhanced trust and credibility, that is, the strong corporate governance practices, helped build a trust and credibility amongst the shareholders, stakeholders, including the investors, customers, employees, and the regulators. And when the stakeholders have a confidence in the company's governance structure, they are more likely to engage with the organization and support its objectives. The risk management also is one of the main importance of corporate governance, that is, the effective corporate governance really helps identify and mitigate the various risks that are associated with the company which may face, whether they are related to the financial management, compliance, operational issues and the reputational concerns. By implementing a robust governance mechanism, the companies can better anticipate and respond to the potential challenges. Now, also about the protection of the shareholder interest. The corporate governance ensures that the interests of the stakeholders are safeguarded and their interests are also respected. So, this includes providing the shareholders with the relevant information, allowing them to participate in the key decision making process and also ensuring a fair treatment in the matters like dividend and the voting rights. Also, the companies with a strong corporate governance framework are better positioned to achieve the long-term sustainability and the success. By prioritizing the factors like the ethical conduct, social responsibility and the environmental stewardship, these companies can actually create the value not only for the shareholders but also for the society as a whole. The clear lines of authority, the well-defined responsibility and effective decision-making process are actually essential components of a good corporate governance. By promoting the efficiency and accountability within the organizations, the companies can optimize their operations and maximize the performance. The compliances with the legal regulatory requirements. The corporate governance help ensure that the companies comply with the relevant laws, regulations and the industry standards. By adhering to the legal requirements and the ethical principles, the companies can actually minimize the risk of the legal disputes, the regulatory sanctions and the reputational damage. So, overall we can say, as far as the importance of the corporate governance is concerned, it plays a very crucial, pivotal and important role in fostering the trust, mitigating the risk and protecting the shareholders' interest, promoting sustainability and ensuring the operational efficiency. So, ensuring the compliance with the legal and the ethical standards. As such, it is an essential aspect of the effective management and the responsible business conduct. The evolution of the corporate governance practices has been influenced by the various factors, including the changes in the economic conditions, the regulatory environments, societal expectations and the corporate scandals. So, we are now talking about the evolution of the corporate governance practices, and basically it has evolved over time and there are many factors which is under the ambit, and the special aspects what we are looking for as far as the evolution part is concerned is it is talking about the regulatory aspects, the societal expectations and the corporate scandals. So, here is a broad view of how the corporate governance practices have evolved over time. Let us talk about the early forms of governance. Historically, the corporate governance primarily focused on protecting the interest of the shareholders, often dominated by a small group of owners or the managers. The governance structures were relatively simple, with the decision-making power concentrated in the hands of the few individuals. But now, over the years, there has been an expansion of the shareholder rights. Overall, there was a growing recognition of the importance of protecting the rights of the shareholders, including their rights to access the information, participate in decision-making process, and hold the management accountable. So, the shareholder activism and regulatory reforms, they played a significant role in expanding their rights. And also, there has been an increasing emphasis on the independence and the diversity of the corporate board. Yes, we are talking about focus on the board independence and the diversity in the board. The independent directors are seen as very essential for providing an impartial oversight and the challenging management decisions effectively. And also, that diversity in the board composition, including the factors like gender, ethnicity, and expertise, is also recognized as beneficial for improving the decision making and the corporate performance. There has also been a rise in the corporate social responsibility. Yes, we are talking about a very essential component which is mandatory as per the Companies Act 2013, that is 2% of the net profits the corporate has to spend on CSR and sustainability. So, there has been a substantial and a huge rise in this regard. Now, in response to this growing societal concerns about the environmental sustainability, the social responsibility, and the ethical business practices, the corporate governance framework have expanded to include the considerations which are beyond the financial performance. The companies are expected to integrate the prime principles of CSR into their governance practices and the governance structures, and also into the prime decision making process. Now, we also talk about the evolution of the corporate governance practices in terms of the risk management and the compliance. The global financial crisis of 2008 highlighted the importance of effective risk management and the regulatory compliance within the corporate governance framework. Now, there has been an increased scrutiny on the risk oversight mechanisms, internal control, and the transparency in the financial reporting to prevent the future crisis and protect the shareholder values. There has also been an evolution practices in regard to emphasis on the executive compensation. Now, the executive compensation practices have come under the scrutiny with concerns about excessive pay, lack of alignment with the long-term performance, and potential for incentivizing the excessive risk-taking. The shareholders and the regulators have actually pushed for a greater transparency and accountability in effective compensation arrangements. Now, integration of the technology and the data governance. With the proliferation of the digital technologies and increasing importance of data in the decision-making process, the corporate governance practices have evolved to include the considerations related to the technology, governance, cyber security, data privacy, and data transformation strategies. Now, there is actually a rise in the globalization and the international standards also, which has actually evolved the corporate governance practices and transformed it. As the companies operate in the increasing globalized business environments, there has been a trend towards harmonizing the corporate governance standards across the jurisdictions. The international organizations such as the Organizations for Economic Cooperation and Development and the International Corporate Governance Network, that is ICGN, have developed the guidelines and the principles to promote the best practices in the corporate governance on a global scale. So overall, the evolution of the corporate governance practices, it reflects an ongoing effort to adapt to the changing business dynamics and the environment, the regulatory requirements and the stakeholder expectations. Now, it is actually a dynamic field when you talk about, and it continues to evolve in response to the emerging challenges and the opportunities in the corporate landscape. Now, there has been an impact of the global events also, like COVID-19 and the climate crisis. The recent trends in the corporate governance have been shaped by a variety of factors, including the global events like COVID-19 pandemic and the escalating climate crisis. So, we will be discussing certain key trends in this regards and what deep impact it has on the recent trends in the corporate governance. Now, there has been an emphasis on the resilience and the crisis management. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the importance of resilience in the corporate governance. The companies have focused on enhancing their crisis management capabilities, including a robust risk assessment, contingency planning, and the business continuity measures. The board of directors have played a very critical role in guiding the organizations through an unprecedented challenges and ensuring an agility in the decision-making process. There has been a stakeholder-centric governance. There has been a shift towards more stakeholder-centric approaches to the corporate governance, moving beyond the traditional focus solely on the shareholders' value. The companies are increasingly considered the interest of a broader range of stakeholders, including the employees, customers, suppliers, communities, and the environments. So, this trend has been reinforced by the recognition of the interconnectedness of the business operations with the societal and environmental issues. Now, the environment, social, and the governance integration. Yes, we are talking about an ESG, environmental, societal governance integration. Factors into a corporate governance framework has actually gained a memento in the recent years. The investors, regulators, and the consumers are placing a greater importance on the ESG considerations, driving companies to adapt the sustainable business practices, disclose the relevant ESG information, and align their strengths with the global sustainable goals. The board diversity and inclusion. There is a growing recognition of the benefits of the diversity and inclusion in the corporate boardrooms. The companies are prioritizing the efforts to enhance the board diversity, including the gender, ethnicity, age, and the professional background. The diverse boards are believed to bring in a broader range of perspective, improve the decision-making process, and enhance the corporate performance. The executive compensation reforms. The executive compensation practices continue to scrutinize, particularly in the light of the income inequality and the perceived misalignment between the executive pay and the company performance. The shareholders, the regulators, are actually advocating for a greater transparency, accountability, and the fairness in the executive compensation arrangement, with an emphasis on the long-term sustainability and the performance matrices also. The digital transformation and the cyber security governance. The rapid advancement of the digital technologies has prompted the companies to prioritize the cyber security governance and the data protection. And with the increasing prevalence of the cyber threats and the data breaches, the boards are paying a very closer attention to the cybersecurity risk, implementing a robust cybersecurity policies and the control, and also ensuring the adequate oversight of the digital transformation initiatives. Now we will be talking about, as far as the recent trends in the corporate governance is concerned, on the supply chain resilience and the ethical sourcing. The supply chain resilience is affected by COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the vulnerabilities in the global supply chains, promoting the companies to reevaluate their supply chain strategies and also prioritize resilience, transparency, and the ethical sourcing practices. Now, the corporate governance framework are evolving to address the supply chain risk, including the human right violations, environmental degradations, and the geopolitical disruptions. The regulatory reforms and disclosure requirement has also been evolved as far as the recent trends in the corporate governance is concerned. The regulators around the world are implementing reforms to actually strengthen the corporate governance standards and enhance the transparency and the accountability. The companies are facing increased scrutiny and the regulatory requirements related to the financial reporting, risk management, and the ESG disclosure, board diversity, executive compensation, and the ethical conduct. So, in the summary, as far as the recent trends in the corporate governance is concerned, we can say that the recent trends in the corporate governance reflect a broader shift towards the resilience, stakeholder centricity, sustainability, diversity, digitalization, and the regulatory compliance. The global events like COVID-19 pandemic and the climate crisis have actually accelerated these trends, highlighting the importance of agile, adaptive governance framework in navigating these uncertainties and this dynamics of complex business environments. Now, the recent changes in the corporate governance have seen a notable emphasis on the shareholder democracy, influencing reflecting a broader movement towards a greater shareholder engagement, empowerment. So, here are some recent trends in this regard when you talk about a shareholder democracy and the influence, which is a very vital part of the corporate governance. What do you mean by shareholder activism? Let's dwell into this field. The shareholder activism has become more prevalent in the recent years, with the investors increasingly using their ownership stakes to advocate for the changes in the corporate governance strategy and the performance. Activist shareholders may push for measures like board refreshments, executive compensation reforms, and environmental and social initiatives and the corporate transparency. Now, there is also a trend as far as the shareholder democracy and the influence is concerned on the proxy access and the shareholder proposals. The proxy access provisions, which allow the shareholders to nominate the directors directly onto a company board, have gained attraction as a means of enhancing the shareholder democracy. Now, similarly, the shareholders are increasingly submitting the proposals on a wide range of governance, environmental, and the social issues for consideration at the annual journal meetings, promoting the companies to engage with the shareholders on many matters. Say on pay votes. Say on pay votes, which give the shareholders the opportunity to approve or reject the executive compensation packages, have become a standard practice in many jurisdictions. Now, these votes, they provide the shareholders with a mechanism to express their views on the executive pay practices and hold the board and the management accountable for aligning the compensation with the company's performance and the shareholders' interest. Also, the proxy access and the shareholder proposals which allow the shareholders to nominate the shareholders' directors directly onto the company's board. Because of this, the similar practices are prevalent across the globe. Now, another trend as far as the shareholder democracy and the influence is concerned is the board accountability and the transparency. There is a growing pressure on the board of directors to enhance their accountability and the transparency to the shareholders. Now, this includes providing a very clearer explanations of the board decision making process, fostering a greater board diversity and the independence, and ensuring that the effective oversight of the corporate strategy, risk management, and the ESG matters. Another important aspect of the shareholder democracy and the influence is engagement and the dialogue. The companies are increasingly engaging with the shareholders in meaningful dialogue to understand their perspective, concerns, and the expectations. The shareholder engagement efforts may involve a regular meeting, investor presentation, response to shareholder inquiries, and disclosure of the relevant information. Effective engagement can actually help build the trust, foster the collaboration, and address the potential areas of disagreement. The next aspect of the shareholder democracy and the influence is the board accountability and the transparency, and definitely this includes providing a very clear expectations in this regard. The next is your environmental and the social advocacy. The shareholders are increasingly using their influence to advocate for environmental and the social initiatives with the companies. This includes pushing for a greater transparency and the disclosure of ESG related risk and opportunities, urging the companies to adopt a sustainable business practice, and also encouraging the alignment with the global sustainability goals like the United Nations Sustainable Goals, that is SDGs. Another important aspect of the democracy and the influence is the institutional investor stewardship. Institutional investors such as the pension funds, asset managers, and the sovereign wealth funds are playing a more active role in the corporate governance through their stewardship activities. Now, these investors are using their voting rights, engaging with the companies on the governance and sustainable issues, and also exercising their influence to promote a long-term value creation and responsible corporate behavior. So, the shareholder democracy and influence are shaping the corporate governance practices by encouraging a greater transparency, accountability, responsiveness, and alignment with the shareholder interest and the broad societal concerns. And the companies that effectively engage with the shareholders and demonstrate a commitment to a good governance are better positioned to build trust, enhance long-term shareholder value, and navigate the evolving stakeholders' expectations. And are these aspects very important? And the shareholder democracy and influence is a very pertinent issue and is a part of a good governance practice. Thank you so much.